Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Swift Creek Customs, and today I have a neat card tutorial that I wanted to share with you. I'm actually going to break this up into two separate tutorials. In this one, I'm going to show you how you can create an Eclipse card just like this photo here in the Leonardo Design Studio software. I'm going to show you a couple of photos close up. I really feel that this tutorial or this card technique is so much better in person when you've actually made the card and put it together. It is really difficult to see that 3D dimension and get the really good effects on how it turns out with the photos or even in video. But I'm going to share how you can create this in the Leonardo Design Studio software. So the first thing I want to say is I am going to be using a US standard of letter size, and I'm going to be creating a standard card size for here in the US. But I know that many of you are from around the world and we all have different paper sizes and different card sizes. So you'll be able to adjust this as needed to whatever you would like to create, whatever size. You can also use it for other things besides just cards. You could use it for home decor or anything else that you'd like to do. So let's take a look at how we can do this in the Leonardo Design Studio software. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I am going to draw a card base. So what we're going to create is the front of the card. So I'm just going to use the Draw Rectangle tool. And then I can just create a rectangle on my workspace. Now, it doesn't have to be a very specific size at the moment because I can go in and here is where I can change it. So for me, I'm going to unlock this little lock here so that I can adjust both my width and my height to what I want. So I'm going to change the width to 5.5 and hit enter, and then tab over and I'm going to type in 4.25 and hit enter. Now this is a standard card size in the US, so you could adjust it how you need it. And we're going to work with just one to start with. So now that I have my card front, I'm going to open the image that I am going to be using on this card front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up to File and Open. And then I'm going to find that file. So what I am using is I am actually using a design from Design Bundles, and I'll have a link in the description below. It is actually created for a skinny tumbler. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on this Highland cow in a truck. And then what I want to do is I am going to be printing and eventually cutting, but I'm not cutting on around this specific image. So what I want to use this for is I want to use it as a background image. So I'm going to choose background image, and then I want to make sure that I have this 300 dpi. 300 dpi is what is standard for print quality. So I'm going to choose that. Of course, it really depends on the actual image size. You can't really increase DPI just by telling it to open at 300 DPI. If your image was created at 72 DPI and you chose 300, you can't really increase that quality or increase the resolution just by pushing a button here. But if the image was created at 300, it's going to come in at 300, and I'm going to choose Next. And then you can see that my image is larger than what I need. It also placed these registration marks on here. We can adjust this. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to place this image inside my red boundaries. And once I do that, you're going to see the image show up. And I actually want to right click on this and I want to choose the order. I want to choose Send to Back so that my card is showing on top of this. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually change the colors of my card. So I want to come over here with my card selected. I'm going to change this to black, and I'm going to choose a stroke fill so that it just shows me that outline of that card. And then I can adjust my image how I would like it placed on this card. So I can use my scale tools by grabbing the corner bounding box and making it smaller, and then I can use my align tools to line that up so it's pretty well centered. Now, one thing I do want to mention here is in this case, my PNG file actually does have a white background, And what you see there is you can see that I have excess space. I'm going to zoom in here. I have excess space around my image at the top, and then the bottom is pretty close, and on the sides are. But I have this excess space. If I tried to move my card base and my image outside of this red outline, this red border, it's going to turn hazy. It's telling you something's wrong. So what I want to show here is that you have to have your full image, the selection box that's around your image, completely within those red borders for it to show correctly. Now what we're going to do is I'm actually going to press F4, and I'm zooming out just a little bit. F4 will zoom out in smaller increments. And I'm going to come up here to my artboard, and I'm going to tell it to use page marks. So then it moves my registration marks out to my maximum page size, which is what I would like. So currently, I'm going to set this whole thing up, and then we can duplicate it and make a second copy at the bottom. So right now, I'm going to select the black card base edge, and I'm going to come over here to properties, and it is currently set as a print, but I want it to set up as a cut. Now, the reason I'm doing this, I want to show you here, is if I go to the Send tab, it's going to look like it's going to cut properly, but nothing shows up. And that is because my designation, my action that I've told it to so far is not correct. So I want to, if you ever encounter a blank screen, that is your first clue on something is not set up properly. So I want to come back here to the design, and I'm going to make sure just my black rectangle is selected. Under the properties panel, I want to change the default from print, and I want to tell it to cut. So now that I've told the black rectangle to cut, I can click on the Send tab to check this. Click Send. Now I have printed artwork that's going to show up, and I have my cut border that's going to show up, my cutting contours. So far, now I have it set up properly if I want to do the print and cut, but we want to add something to that. So in order to create this eclipse effect, what it essentially is you are popping up one layer higher than the other. So we're going to take some text and we're going to pop that up outside of the original image. So it's going to create a layered effect. So what I want to do is I need to create that text. So I'm going to come down here to my text tool. When I open that up, I can highlight my text here, and I'm just going to type in hello. And then for this demonstration, I just chose a very bold font. The bolder fonts that you have, the easier, especially your first time creating this, is going to work the best. Scripty fonts are really not, or thin fonts are not going to give you the same sort of effect. You're just not going to be able to see that, and it's going to be harder to work with and to glue down to your surface. So I would recommend starting with a big bold font. So I chose Impact, and I'm going to click Apply. And then this text here, I can resize this, and I can place it on top of my image. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything, and I'm going to come down here, and I'm going to choose the center align so that I can align that. Now, we can tell this when I select this hello, currently it also defaults to print. The reason behind it is that we have turned our registration marks on. So Leonardo is thinking that we're printing all of these items we put onto our design mat. We just need to tell it that we want it to cut. And when I do that, it's going to change that outline, and you're going to see it turn blue. Currently in my software, the little blue dot means that it's going to turn blue. So now what I've created is I have created, we'll come over here to the Send tab so you can see this. I'm going to click Send. I now still have my printed artwork in my top mat, and then on my bottom mat, I have my card base that's going to be cut, or my top layer of my card base, and hello is going to be cut out of that. So it's currently set up exactly how we want it to cut. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to choose File, Save, and then select the location you want it to save. So then I'm just going to type in a name. And if you do different sizes, you may want to save the size with the card name or the file name. So then what I can do is I can select everything. I'm left clicking and dragging over everything. I'm going to choose Control C, Control V, and then I'm going to drag my second copy away. Now, what I want to point out here, another thing to mention, I mentioned that white space at the top of my file here. If you come down here and notice, and maybe I can zoom in just a little bit more, when I moved that down, you can see that that white is showing on top of my card base here. Now, it technically wouldn't do anything. Let's see, it might print that way. Yep, actually it looks like it will. So that white is going to be on top of my card base on top. So you want to make sure that nothing is overlapping. So this top one, I can move it up a little bit, but I have to keep it within this red border for my registration marks. And then the bottom, you have to also keep in mind your bottom selection box around it. You need to make sure that they're not overlapping. Another way you can work around it, and this is just going to vary depending on the image that you have chosen. So some images have more white space around them than others. In this case, what I can do is I can select my image, right click on it and choose order. If I send it to back, you can see that that shows up there. You just want to make sure that that graphic at the top is not going to overlap your graphic on the bottom area, because then that's how it's going to print. So we should be good with this one. And then we're going to come over, you want to double check it on the send tab. And since I set all the actions up, the cut versus the print, on the first one, when I copy that, it saves it to the second image. So now I currently have two images that are going to be printed. And then I have two of my card bases that are going to cut. And it's going to read and it's going to cut in the same place that it shows. So then I can set up and I can send this to my printer. So I'm going to choose the top image. I'm going to choose send to printer. And then you're going to get your printer windows. For me, I'm going to choose the more settings, and I need to change this to my rear tray because that is how I feed my cardstock through. I'm going to choose OK. And then when you are ready, you can go ahead and click print. And it's going to print out your page. My printer's Wi-Fi, it tells me it's offline all the time, but then you can hear it, it goes to printing. And then what we're going to do is I am going to switch over. We're going to set this up on the Siser Juliet. When you are ready to cut, you're going to come back over here, choose your cutting contours, and you're going to send it after doing your test cuts. Make sure to test cut for your materials. It's going to save you time, frustration, and materials in the long run. So let's take a look at the next steps. And once your print is completely dry, you can go ahead and set that onto your cutting mat and get it set up to go. I did increase the video speed here by 2 times. You didn't need to watch me real time. I recommend your test cuts every single time. I've been cutting all day with this design, so I knew what those were. I positioned the blade housing, the tip of it, in that bottom left registration mark. Check out the links in the description below for step-by-step setup for a print and cut and exactly how you should align that. And then it's going to register those marks and we're going to switch back over. This is real time. This is real time cutting. Juliet is super fast. In some cases, when I watch this, I feel like I'm goat tying or rope tying, calf tying a calf, and I should throw my hands in the air and call it good that it's done in just seconds. Again, this is real time cutting right here, so super quick. Okay, so I'm going to take it out from my machine, but I'm going to lay down my protective covering here. Then I'm going to flip my mat over, going to place that on top, and then I'm going to carefully peel my mat away from my design. And I'll just remove the excess first. And this also protects my mat from any debris on my table, so that's why I use my protective cover. Then I'm just going to carefully remove the largest portions, and we'll get that H here in just a second. It'll pop right out of there, and you just want to go carefully so that you don't tear your cardstock. And then once I have those, I'm going to go ahead and set that aside, and I can just carefully remove these. My mat's not as super sticky as it used to be, so I can easily just peel those off carefully. And you want to keep that center for that O as well, so keep that, don't lose it. And then we're going to do the same thing to the top word. Keep those separate. I'm going to show you two different techniques with this. So I was able to do two of the cards on the front, and I'll show you some photos at the end of other options. But then I'm going to cover my mat again with my protective cover, and I can set that aside. And then what I need to do is, so here I have a couple examples. Here's one example that I already did, but I used a white card base. So I am going to show you how to create your own card bases. And in this case, I think it'll pop more when we have a darker color. So, I mean, these are cool in person, but the photos are just not going to do them justice. But it does have some dimension to it. So that's an example. So those are some of the ones I made while I was testing this whole thing. So the first thing, to make your own card base. Now I'm using letter size. I'm in the US, so this works for a letter size. If you're using different size paper, and in different places in the world, your card sizes are different too. I know my friend and admin from London, she sends out a lot of square cards, which for us in the US is more expensive to ship and mail. It's not a standard size. So I am working off of standard US size, and I'm going to be making a card base that is going to end up being a 4.25 or 4 1/4 by 5.5 or 5.5 inches. So the first thing you're going to do, since this is letter size, so we have 8.5 by 11. So your 11-inch width here, it's 11 inches. You're going to cut that at 5.5 inches. So I'm going to cut 5.5 inches. And then I have two card bases from one sheet of letter size cardstock. Then what I'm going to do is, you can do this multiple ways, but I have actually a scoring Simply Scored is what it's called. This one's from Stampin' Up, but you can find them with different companies. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to score my cardstock now at 4 1/4. Again, this is for standard US cards. You could also do a 5x7, but if you do a 5x7, you're not going to get two of the fronts on a sheet of letter size paper. So that's why I'm kind of working with the size I am. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside. And then I can just take and I can fold this over on that score line. The score line helps. Maybe should have made it a little bit deeper, but get it all lined up. When I have it lined up, I can go ahead and use my bone folder and just help that down. So now I have 2 card bases. Okay, so there's my card bases. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you 2 different techniques. So I have 2 card fronts here. I'm going to show 2 different ways you can do this with these Eclipse cards is what they're called. So first I'm going to start and just move my letters off a little bit. And then this one, the H just didn't pop out. It'll easily pop out here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to glue this down using some scrapbook adhesive. This is a tape runner that I've used for years. Not the same one, but the same brand. And I'm just going to make sure that it's going to be good and stuck down. Then I'm going to stick it down onto my card base. And then the first way I'm going to show you is I'm going to take foam, craft foam tape, and I'm going to pop those letters up. So I'm just going to cut little pieces and we'll get going. I'll speed this up as I get the rest of it done. And I have all the supplies linked in the video description below, so you can find the supplies that I am using. I love paper crafting, so I have all kinds of adhesive that I use. And then you're just going to place that in that negative space, get it lined up and secure it, and then you're going to continue for the rest of them. Okay, and there we have our first card. So this is one way you can do it, so it gives you some dimension. I do think it pops just a little bit better. These are going to be so much better in person. It pops just a little bit better with that dark background, so it gives it a little bit of, an outline there versus the white background. So now I'll show you a second method that you can do that it's a reverse of the Eclipse. So what we're going to do is, here's our card, here's my lettering, and just make sure to keep that little O. And the other thing to note here is when you're doing this, it's very directional specific, so you want to make sure that you're not getting your L's mixed up or your photo's not going to match. So just something to be mindful of. And then in this case, we're going to use the foam tape and actually what I want to do is, I saw this neat little trick. Before I do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place that on top, then I'm going to grab a piece of washi tape. Okay, so I just grabbed a piece of some washi tape I had in my stash. It has avocados on it. Doesn't really matter what it has on it. And I'm just going to carefully take this off. Washi tape's great because it's usually pretty non-stick, so you could peel it up easily, which is what we're going to do. So once I have my card laid out on there, I'm just going to take this piece of washi and I'm just going to tape that down on my surface so this card doesn't move. So I have that all lined up there. And then what I can do is I can take this and I can use my tape runner, and then I can add my letters in. So I'll do each one of these. And then while I have this here, what I can do is I can take this, and it's going to need a really super thin piece of your foam tape. So you could actually, if you're going to be doing this, you could probably go in and you could edit the design a little bit to make the center a little bit bigger if you wanted to. But if you just go careful, you can still get it in there. So I just cut little small pieces of my foam tape, and then while it's all in place, I'm going to go ahead and just place this one in here. So this one's going to be popped up, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully remove this washi. Now I haven't got the full piece stuck down yet, but I do have my letters where they need to go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some foam tape on the back side of this. And now once I have all the backing of the tape removed, I can go ahead and then I can just line this up and secure it down. And then you have just a little bit different look. So you have some dimension here, make sure not to pop that up too much, and you have a little bit more dimension there. So those are two ways that you can create an Eclipse card. This is the Eclipse, and then this is the reverse. Just kind of something different, something neat. I've been seeing these with card making companies for a couple years now. Check out the links in the description below for more information on the supplies used and also other tutorials. Thanks for joining me.